Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another quick take or part 2 of the Markle versus Markle video series. So before we get into the Oprah interview segment, which is actually a really short portion of the complaint, I do want to point out something that I've added as a pinned comment as well, which is that I don't want people mistaking the fact that Samantha has enough evidence to prove that Meghan is dishonest as being the same as having good prospects of success in this defamation case. So proving Meghan is not honest does not automatically mean that she has a great case for defamation, because I don't want to repeat myself every single time we go through her statements, but you have to keep in mind the 4 elements we discussed in the last video. Every element must be satisfied in relation to each of these statements. So it's not just an overarching, the gist of all of these statements together. No, every single statement that Samantha has put forth must be false, identifies her, communicated to a third party, published, and caused her serious injury. So again, not in a physical sense. I saw this really funny comment going, "Where's your hair?" I don't know. I guess on my head? Anyways, some people are so bizarre. I mean, they were a lovely person, but it's just one of those double take comments. My hair is here. It's just I like wearing hats, or caps rather. So back to the video. Also, I'd like to thank everyone who's recently joined the channel. I've had a bunch of subscribers join, so thank you for that. So agenda for this video, we are going to start off, as I said, with the Oprah interview part, but then we're going to talk about the issues. So the weaknesses, things that can go wrong in the case. And this is going to involve, for example, the fact that Finding Freedom wasn't written by Meghan, it was written by Omid Scobie and Carol Duran. So why weren't they joined as co-defendants? And other issues that we're going to discuss as well. But let's start off with the Oprah interview. Here in paragraph 29, we start off with, during the interview, in a calculated effort to damage and discredit the plaintiff and her published autobiography, the defendant falsely and maliciously stated that, number 1, she was an only child. Number 2, she last saw the plaintiff at least 18, 19 years ago, and then before that, 10 years ago. And that the plaintiff, Samantha, only changed her name to Markle in her early 50s when Meghan started dating Prince Harry. So now we've already kind of gone through these statements because they were in the email. If you remember the email that Meghan sent to Jason Knopf back on the 10th of December, 2018. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, the issue here is it's not enough to prove that these 3 statements are false. They have to have a sufficient nexus with a loss of reputation or a damage to Samantha's reputation. So something simply being false is obviously not a cause of action for defamation. You know, that's lies. And lying, unless it's perjury or contempt of court, is not a crime, unfortunately, if you ask me. And ask Zach, because I think he said lying should be an actual crime, and I agree. Next, they say that the defendant intentionally promoted and published the false and malicious narrative that the plaintiff had only met the defendant a handful of times in her life, that they are virtual strangers, but that the plaintiff has sought to cash in on her relationship with the defendant by selling fabricated stories to the press about the defendant's childhood. Again, a statement that we have dealt with in a lot of detail in the last video because it appeared in Meghan's email to Jason Knopf. Next, the defendant, Meghan, made these false and defamatory statements with actual malice and the specific intent to destroy the plaintiff's reputation and credibility. As just one example of the defendant's malice and hatred towards the plaintiff, the defendant demanded that her father, Thomas Markle Sr., terminate his relationship with the plaintiff and disown her if he wished to continue having a relationship with the plaintiff. Now, this is something that Thomas Markle has actually stated. I remember hearing him say this in an interview, but is it relevant? Now, believe it or not, this is actually the end of the Oprah interview segment because Meghan actually barely brought up Samantha during the interview. Then rest of the complaint lists basically how all the statements that have been put forth do satisfy all the elements according to them. Of course, just because one side says something, that doesn't mean that it's true. So basically all of the statements that were discussed in this complaint, or that were listed in this complaint, are false and defamatory. Meghan made, published, and disseminated such statements with actual malice and actual knowledge that the statements were false. The statements are defamatory in that they prejudiced, harmed, and injured the plaintiff's reputation, and they exposed her to hatred, ridicule, or contempt in her business, reputation, and occupation. Now, this paragraph 36 is important because I saw in the comments someone saying, no, she can't rely on the letter to Jason Kanoff because the statute of limitations for defamation in Florida is 2 years, which it is. And the email, not letter, I think I said letter, and the email was written in 2018, which is almost 4 years ago now, or just over 3 years. Now, if you see this paragraph, it kind of gives you a very strong argument to say that it is actually within the statute of limitations. The statements were published in the defendant's email, first disclosed in November 2021. Here they're saying then the book was in August 2020 and the Oprah interview was in 2021, and basically we're within the statute of limitations. So why I'm bringing this up is there is this misconception that the statute of limitations, so the time period during which someone can sue, starts to run as soon as the cause of action arises. That is generally the case, but there is an exception. So what I'm saying is the email was private. There was no way for Samantha Markle to have known of that email's existence. I'm sure she had a hunch, but hunches don't cut it, especially not in a court of law. And she said herself, when that letter was released to the public as a result of the appeal in the UK last year, that's when she decided that, okay, I'm going to have to do something about this and I'm probably going to sue. Because she had the evidence that connected Meghan directly and irrefutably to the statements that were eventually published in Finding Freedom. Now, that's not to say that anyone out there can claim ignorance and go, I didn't know that that was out there, so the statute doesn't start until I found out about it. No. This email was private. There was no conceivable way for Samantha to know about it or gain access to it until Jason Kanoff leaked it in November. Well, we found out about it in November of 2021. And Samantha is part of the public. She didn't have access to Jason's emails. She wasn't a party to the privacy and copyright claim in the UK. So she didn't have access to that evidence until the rest of us did. Now, if someone published something and it was there in the public domain, but you just didn't do anything about it or you didn't know about it, but it was there, easily accessible to anyone, then, you can't claim, no, I only discovered it at this certain date. So that's when the statute starts. That's when the statute of limitations starts. It's not how it works, unfortunately. So I hope that clarifies things. Statute of limitations sometimes starts to run when the plaintiff discovers that the cause of action has taken place. Now here they get into defamation by implication, and essentially their argument is that Meghan intentionally and knowingly omitted facts or juxtaposed a series of facts to imply a defamatory connection between them. Among other things, defendants' false statements created the defamatory implication that the plaintiff had no relationship whatsoever with her sister and that the plaintiff has created a lucrative career selling false stories to tabloids and television programs when she knows nothing about the defendant's childhood. And then it basically just goes on to say that she suffered losses. She lost jobs and her book didn't sell well. So here's the deal. I want to tackle this one by one so I don't forget and I don't get things. When there's so much to put into a video, it's easy to miss out on things. First of all, I want to go back to the initial concern I had with, sure, Samantha can prove Meghan's not honest, but are these statements actually defamatory? I think there's also a concern that things said in a private email shouldn't be defamatory, even if they're leaked. I think I saw someone say that, but these things are used as evidence routinely, and even in criminal cases, civil cases, and it got leaked, it got published, and it basically, irrefutably, as I said, connects Meghan to finding freedom. So it shows that she has some culpability with the statements that were made in that book. Because, as I said, the authors probably wouldn't have made them but for her communications with them and all of these. Let's go back to the actual statements that were pointed out. Everything can really directly be linked to the email. Meghan had crossed paths with Samantha only twice. And, you go back to the email and you can basically say, minimal interaction, a handful of times. There is only one picture of Samantha and Meghan. If there were more, Samantha would have sold them. This one, I don't think Meghan specifically said this in her email. So there isn't a direct link with that one. But when you look at if there were more, Samantha would have sold them. Again, I'm kind of being a lawyer here and just arguing a certain side. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a strong argument or the right argument. But this is what lawyers do. You work with what you have. So you could say, well, Meghan has said that her sister's selling lies to the media and made a lucrative career out of it. So this is kind of connected to it. If there were more photos, Samantha would have sold them. Samantha reached out to The Sun with her story and how snagging a royal has been Meghan's lifelong ambition. Yes, this is something that Meghan has pretty much said, not verbatim, in her email. Samantha was paid handsomely. Meghan has stated that, a lucrative career by selling lies. This one I don't necessarily see in Meghan's email, but again, this is but one email. I'm sure there are more that we just don't have. So, but see, this is what I mean. I am working with what I have. I don't know what else is out there. I don't know what Samantha's lawyers have. I don't know if this even progresses to the discovery stage. I don't know what else they can get. So, but again, is this defamatory? Saying that Samantha wasn't invited to Meghan's first wedding. There is a strong argument that, okay, cool, fine, that didn't happen. She invited her. Or she couldn't go because she was sick, not because she wasn't invited. But how is saying she wasn't invited to her sister's wedding defamatory? Because remember, it's not enough that it's a lie. It's not enough. Meghan asked her father to intervene with Samantha, and Samantha's father told her, what you're doing is hurting your sister. I feel like there is something here about that in Meghan's email. Yeah, kind of. I mean, there's a gist of it. Media pressure crumbled him, and he began doing press deals brokered. No, that's not really the same thing. But basically, what's the relevance of this? I mean, I guess, again, I'm arguing here with what I have. This can be used to say that, well, Meghan is saying this to further demonstrate that Samantha is a horrible, terrible human being who is forcing her father to lie and, again, give interviews for money and all that. She's orchestrating this hate campaign against Meghan. So much so that Meghan had to ask her father to intervene. And to make things worse, Thomas actually said, what you're doing is hurting your sister. So this basically would confirm that whatever Meghan is saying about Samantha, which is that she's lying and creating this career out of lying, is true. So that's how it's relevant. And that's where Thomas Markle can come in and say, I never said that. I never told her that what she's doing is hurting your sister, because she's not doing anything. She's just speaking the truth. She's combating Meghan's version with her version. You know what I mean? But the other issue with finding freedom is the fact that the authors were not joined as co-defendants. Now, it makes sense. It actually does make sense, believe it or not, because they're both based in the UK. And this is a civil case. You can't force or extradite international people who are not subject to US laws, for example, to come to the US and stand trial. Another issue is they could have gone for the publishers. But let's not forget that Samantha's not made of money. She probably has very limited money. I don't even know if there are enough people who would contribute to a GoFundMe. I don't know if she set one up. But the thing to bear in mind here is money talks. and it's also in the courts of law. And if she were to sue the publishers along with Meghan, and then she lost, the costs that she would have to pay would be astronomical. It's bad enough that she's probably going to have to pay, if she loses, and I'm hoping that she doesn't, again, assuming this even makes it to trial. If she loses, she will have to pay for Meghan's legal fees and costs. That's bad enough. Meghan can afford that if it goes the other way around. But to pay then for a publisher's lawyers, they have a whole in-house team and in-house counsel for a huge publishing company, would be incredibly expensive and something that Samantha Markle would never be able to afford. And so there are things that have to be taken into consideration when it comes to deciding who to sue. And, of course you have to sue the right person. You can't just go, I'm going to sue Meghan because, she's the root of all of this. But if it wasn't for that email that leaked to Jason Kanoff, then Samantha would not have been able to sue, at least for Finding Freedom. Okay, I really wanted to get that Finding Freedom co-author defendant issue out of the way before I got into the rest of this, because it's just something that's really important to point out. I'm worried about the portion where direct quotes from Finding Freedom have been extracted and assigned to Meghan when they were actually written and published by the authors. So I do think that that's going to be raised as, hey, you're suing the wrong person. Meghan never intended for that email to leak. She never leaked it. Jason Kanoff leaked it. It was never meant to be published. But, again, you look at the elements. It's publication to a third party, not to the world at large. So third party means someone other than the plaintiff and the defendant. And in this instance, Meghan knew that her email would not only obviously go to Jason Kanoff, but then would be passed on, at least the contents of it, would be passed on to Omid Scobie and Carol Duran, the authors. That was the whole point of this email. Here she says, for when you sit down with them, it may be helpful to have some background reminders. So I've included them below just in case. So Meghan wrote this email knowing it's going to obviously be seen by a third party. And then also, more importantly, to add to that, knowing that whatever she said will probably form the basis of what's going to be written eventually in that book, which is exactly what ended up happening, because I just went and did all these cross references, and you saw how pretty much everything they said about Samantha, Meghan said in her email. Now, the issue I have in general, before I get to defenses, if there are even any, is, again, we kind of circle back to this notion of simply proving that your sister is a liar does not mean you were defamed. Because with Samantha, people hated her, Meghan's fan base, the media ridiculed her since late 2017 or 2018. I'm not sure. I really wasn't following this, obviously, all the way back then. But she wasn't exactly on good terms with the media and the world at large from the get-go. I'm not saying that's her fault. I'm just saying that is just reality. So all of the injury that she claims to have suffered, for the most part, I'm saying, not everything, because she published the book, I believe, February last year, which was a month before the Oprah interview aired, but after the book was published. So in between. So she's going to have to prove that everything she's listing as, injury happened after the book was published and after the Oprah interview. And that's the difficulty here. Meghan's lawyers are going to easily be able to prove that she's always been hated. She's always been seen as the evil half-sister. Nothing's changed. All of this injury that she claims to have suffered was pre-existing, prior to these causes of action even arising, prior to Meghan even marrying Prince Harry. So that's definitely going to be a difficult spot for Samantha and her team to jump over. Now, if she actually has, because I don't know what she has, let's say she has spreadsheets that show that her book sales were doing quite well, and then after the Oprah interview, they plummeted. Now, this is hypothetical. I don't know if she has proof of this, but that would be a strong indicator that, you see, after the 7th of March, 2021, the sales plummeted. Now, it's unfortunate that she published it in between Finding Freedom and right before the interview, because for all we know, Finding Freedom did impact the sales of her book. But it was never published until several months, almost 6 months after the book was released. So this is the issue. There's no comparison here. There's no control, because Samantha's book was published after Finding Freedom. And so there's no before and after. The book could have just not sold even if Finding Freedom was never published. You know what I mean? I'm just trying to show you guys where these holes and weaknesses can arise, because that's what I was taught to do by brilliant lawyers and mentors. You have to assess the strengths of your opponent's case. And that also means assess the weakness of your case. Not that this is my case, but obviously, I'm vouching for the truth. So there's an issue. Now, there's also the issue of, who cares if Meghan said that she didn't have a relationship with you? Maybe that was her perspective. Maybe these are not statements of fact. And in Meghan's opinion, she was a stranger to her siblings, and she didn't have a connection with them. They may have felt it on their end. They may have read into things, but that wasn't the case for Meghan. And again, how does that impact Samantha's reputation? That's what it all comes down to. So there is room for argument, of course, like I said in the last video. Well, this makes her out to be a liar and, a person that is banking off the lies. Which, by the way, this insinuation in particular, this statement where Samantha's basically, Meghan says Samantha's making a career out of lying, that is defamatory. That one to me is the strongest. It is completely, it far outweighs any claim that, we weren't close, because someone told me, I didn't read Samantha's book, but someone told me her book actually kind of confirms that they were never close and that their relationship wasn't exactly harmonious. But if we hone in on the allegation that she is making a career, profiting out of lying to the press, that is absolutely, in my opinion, I could be wrong, there's room for argument, defamatory. It's one thing to generally say that someone is lying. Everyone says that about someone, and that's where you kind of start towing the line between, is it a statement of fact? Is it a statement of opinion? Because you can have an opinion that someone's dishonest. But it's another thing to specifically state that someone is lying about something really major. For example, in Samantha's case, lying just to make a career. Or, for example, again, personal situation I can inject into here. Someone accused me of lying about being a lawyer and having served in the military. So these two things, especially the lawyer part, but also the military, are not just general, oh yeah, she's generally a liar, and that's my opinion of her. No, it's a specific, you're lying about this integral thing. And it's integral because it's who I am. It's how I put myself out there on the internet, and it's what makes me seem credible to my audience. Imagine if I wasn't a lawyer and all of this was a sham. So for someone to say that about me is highly defamatory. I hope you can see the distinction here. So in essence, Samantha's going to have to prove that her situation got a lot worse after the book was published and the interview was aired. Because, like I said, there wasn't exactly a love affair between her and the world prior to these two things being published. So if the status quo didn't change, if she always got hate from Meghan's fans, if she always was, ridiculed and targeted on the internet prior to the publication of these two materials, it's going to be hard to establish that necessary link. As for the fans, by the way, I have to say, as much as we don't like to hear this, Meghan Markle, unless we can directly prove that she has incited hate against her family or against her sisters, go do this to them, Some people are saying that these fans are paid, but I have no evidence of that. They're all presumably adults who are acting of their own accord. And we cannot blame Meghan for the actions of her overzealous fans. That's just the way life works, You can't just be like, you're to blame for the fact that your sister had to get a restraining order. Because these people, her fans, have their own minds to think with and to decide on their own what actions they take. to decide on their own whether to believe Meghan's version or not. You know, again, with my situation, I believed Meghan up until the Oprah interview. I made up my mind based on the information available to me. So we can't start holding Meghan responsible for the atrocities that the people who are, intense rabid followers of her commit. I'm just trying to balance things out here. I don't want you all to think that Samantha has an ironclad case simply because she can prove that Meghan is dishonest and that they indeed had a relationship as children. You know, saying that you didn't have a relationship with someone as a child isn't necessarily defamatory unless Samantha has strong evidence that it is. As for the defenses, now, I really think Meghan's lawyers are going to work at getting this thrown out. I know in the last video I said settle, but that's again assuming that Samantha's side has evidence and things that I don't know about that really strengthen their case and establish that necessary link between the statements and the injury caused to Samantha. Because don't forget, I don't know. I'm operating on what I have available to me on the internet, which is probably 1%. Now, with defenses, the only two that would apply to Meghan, in my opinion, are substantial truth and honest opinion. Someone in the comments asked me about absolute and qualified privilege. They absolutely do not apply. Well, absolute privilege, at least, certainly doesn't apply because that basically protects people from being sued for the things that they say in judicial proceedings and parliamentary debates. So you know how those parliamentarians, we see them on TV, they're all heatedly arguing and saying things about each other that aren't very nice. That's all privileged. It's all protected. You can't use that to sue for defamation. Now, if you go out and repeat the things that you said in parliament, or if you go out and repeat the things that you said in a judicial proceeding, that's not protected anymore. Qualified privilege, on the other hand, is when someone, for example, I'm actually going to use myself because not that I was sued for defamation, but when I got the threat, this is one of the defenses that my lawyer and I, yes, I got a lawyer because I don't recommend self-representation. You're too biased. I drafted basically my defenses to him and he went, yep, he ticked them all off and he was like, absolutely. Qualified defamation. Qualified privilege is when you say something that you have a moral or ethical or social duty to say, and your audience have an actual interest in receiving that information. So you have an interest in giving it, and your audience has an interest in receiving it. And in my situation, it's SA. And in general, male victims of female perpetrators. It is the basis of my channel. And so it is all done as a discussion point to raise awareness. And I have actually accumulated an entire audience based on that topic. So it's not just said for the sake of saying it, you know? It is free of malice. It is simply a public interest scenario, essentially. And I don't see how Meghan's family affairs are of any public interest. I don't see how she has a moral or social or ethical duty to say that her sister is lying and to say that she doesn't know her family and to say that she was an only child. It's all personal. It's like Michelle Obama said. You know, she said it's personal family stuff that should be dealt with personally. Even Kristen Stewart, she was interviewed for the Diana movie, and she actually said, I had to tune out of that interview because it was so uncomfortable. I felt like I was intruding. And so there's nothing that can define Meghan's commentary with regards to Samantha as qualified privilege, in my opinion. As for substantial truth and opinion, look, I'm going to go through her statement again just to see if anything can be classified as opinion, other than the general notion of I was never close to them. She is entitled to say that she wasn't close to them. That is her opinion. That's not a statement of fact. But there are many things that are statements of fact. Now, again, remember the elements. Just because it's a statement of fact that is false, that is not the only element that has to be satisfied. So does not automatically make it defamatory. Samantha dropped out of high school. This is a statement of fact. You can't say, in my opinion, Samantha dropped out of high school. Meghan saw Samantha only a handful of times and never had a relationship. Now, seeing someone only a handful of times is not a matter of opinion. It's a statement of fact, which can be disproven. But again, you know, to what end? How does that defame Samantha? It's up to her lawyers to argue that. Never had a relationship with either of them is... This one toes the line. I can easily see how Meghan can say, well, that's how it was to me. That's how I saw it, you know? So it's Meghan's subjective view of her relationship with her siblings. Upon Meghan dating Harry, Samantha changed her last name back to Markle. That is a statement of fact. That is not a statement of opinion. That is something that can directly be proven or disproven. So, I mean, I know we have here her degree, like I showed you guys yesterday, and it clearly says Samantha Markle. So that's false. And by the way, this can be defamatory because this is Meghan's reasoning. You know, she goes, well, she changed her last name to create a career out of being associated with me and lying about me to give herself credibility as my sister, which is essentially what she said to Jason in her email. So that ties back to that allegation that I do believe has a strong prospect of being viewed as defamatory. Samantha began a career selling stories to the press. That is not a matter of opinion. That is a statement of fact. That can be proven or disproven. At least that's how I see it. This one, absolutely. These two are absolutely statements of fact. I think this, Samantha has lost, she had lost custody of all three of her children, is defamatory. As I said in my last video, I think it's one of the worst things that you can say about a parent. And it's one of the worst things that you can say to discredit someone's personality and character. And again, as I said, not a statement of opinion. Samantha had 3 children from 3 different fathers. This is a statement of fact. I mean, I obviously don't have to point this one out. You can't have an opinion about this. But how is it defamatory? I mean, in this day and age, even if Meghan tried to use this, which, you know, I personally believe was her intent, I don't know for certain, to make Samantha, you know, appear to be less than, you know, as some kind of a, as it says here in this complaint, as some kind of a slut, you know, who sleeps around and has children from multiple men. I think we're in a day and age in society where people don't even blink an eye about this, about it anymore. You know what I mean? You know, when I read it, I was kind of like, how is this a bad thing? I think I touched on this yesterday. There's nothing wrong about it. So the way I see it, Meghan is just behaving like a misogynist and going, oh, you know, that's a sign that she's not a chaste woman. You know, she's not pure. She's vile. But objectively, to a reasonable person, is that defamatory? I don't know. I feel like it's not. But of course, there's room for argument. And finally, Samantha brokered press deals for her father. This is a statement of fact. This is not an opinion. This is something that can be proven or disproven. And it has the potential to be defamatory because it ties in with that she's banking off a career of lying to the press. So it's not an ironclad case and it's not a hopeless case. Samantha is definitely being gutsy because Meghan's going to work with the best of the best because she has the money to do that. Whereas Samantha, I mean, she's not even asking for much. People are saying she's not asking for much because she wants to show the world that this is not about money. This is about setting the record straight. But here's the problem. Sometimes, you know, as much as you want to set the record straight, a court of law is not the place to do it. And that's my concern here. Now, the lucrative career, lying to the press, I think it can stick. Everything else, just trying to say, no, we had a relationship. I mean, I guess it all ties in. It all ties in. See, it's such a mess. By the way, fun fact, defamation cases are one of the most complex. I bet you thought I was going to say one of the most expensive because I've said that 1,000 times. They are also one of the most complex forms of litigation on the planet. So if this sounds messy to you, it's because it is. It depends on how good her lawyers are with tying everything back together. So if they tie in Meghan's assertions that she and Samantha never had a relationship with the assertion that Samantha lies to the press to make money, then she has a case. Then it's relevant. Because anyone can say, what's the relevance? Who cares if you didn't have a relationship? Well, it ties in with she's lying to the press. You know what I'm saying? So lawyers make or break cases. Trust me, I know. One more thing, or two more things I wanted to bring up that I said I would last video are firstly, Meghan's lawyer's response to this, and secondly, how the media has been handling this. So Meghan's lawyer, an attorney named Michael Kump, said that this baseless and absurd lawsuit is just a continuation of a pattern of disturbing behavior. We will give it the minimum attention necessary, which is all it deserves. And this is what I mean when I say her lawyers are going to, trivialize this, and they're going to want to throw it out. So Meghan, at that point, wouldn't even have to settle, of course. It would just be case dismissed. In terms of how reporters have been covering this, I was going to show you guys a couple of reporters. Oh, man, they were so embarrassing. It's just, I don't even know if they're reporters. They're probably just people who, host an entertainment show. But the general attitude is, Meghan said she doesn't know you. Back off. They're just taking everything Meghan Markle says at face value. Whatever happened to hearing the other side? And not only that, to actually doing a basic Google search before you sit down in front of the camera for your fancy show and saying, so this is what Meghan said, but, this is what Samantha said. This is what there is on the internet in terms of photographs and evidence that back up Meghan, back up Samantha. Whatever happened to that? Why not put it up for debate for your audience rather than just tell your audience, Samantha's a nut job who needs to go away? Because that is essentially how many, many reporters have been handling this defamation case. Meghan said that Samantha only changed her name when Meghan met Harry. They're just parroting. They're just repeating. It's already been disproven. It's really, really easy to disprove these things. Why parrot and make an embarrassment out of yourselves and follow along in Meghan's footsteps, who is clearly not exactly in the world's good books right now in terms of popularity and credibility. So yeah, it's unfortunate that this is someone who's trying to combat the lies, whether a defamation case is the way to do it or not. And the media just goes, you're a joke. Get away, you creep. It's pretty sad. And it's definitely not, it's not indicative of good journalism or reporting whatsoever. Oh boy. I think I'm going to end it here. This video has once again gone on for too long. I really hope I helped clarify things to you guys from both sides. I think we were on defenses, but I've just demonstrated that, look, one or two things can be claimed to be an opinion, but most of them are statements of fact. I have concerns over the Finding Freedom segment because they were written by other people, published by an organization that has nothing to do with Meghan, and I'm concerned that that's going to be raised as you're basically going after the wrong person for that portion at least, unless her lawyers argue that everything traces back to Meghan, which obviously it looks like that's what they're doing, which is why Samantha didn't do anything until she found out about the email to Jason. This is obviously just the beginning. We're just going to have to see how it goes, whether Meghan's going to show up in Florida. And I'm sure her lawyers are going to work extremely hard to get this thrown out before we even get anywhere. But I will say one thing that I also read in the comments from the comments of yesterday's video. Even if Samantha doesn't win, and this is what you all are saying, simply putting the truth out there, simply using this case as a platform to show the world that Meghan is not honest and that they did indeed have some sort of relationship, and that Meghan was up until 2016 hanging out with Samantha's daughter and praising her, and she loves her so much, and the truth will go out there. So it's like the case in the UK from last year with Meghan's privacy and copyright claim. Yeah, she won, but Look what happened as a direct result of that case. And she filed it. She shot herself, basically, in the foot. These emails leaked. But for Meghan Markle filing that copyright and privacy claim against Associated Newspapers, we would never, and Samantha, more importantly, would never have had access or had knowledge of this email. So it might be the same thing in this case. She may not have a good defamation case, but she's put the truth out there, and maybe, just maybe, some people out there come across this information and go, you know what? Maybe Samantha actually, has a point. Maybe instead of stating the trouble began with Samantha Markle, as it says in Finding Freedom, maybe it began with Meghan Markle. And with that, I'm going to leave you and love you and thank you for spending time with me. And thank you for your lovely comments. Thank you for subscribing and liking the video. To those of you asking about the Johnny Depp case, yes, I don't intend on just ignoring it. I will be covering it. It's not going to be as, intense as it used to be in 2020 because I was in lockdown, I was at home, and I had a lot of spare time to work on those videos. Unfortunately, I can't say the same 2 years later. So I will try my best to dedicate time to covering that case as well. But yeah, take care, everyone, and I'll catch you in a future video.